They've made my cord a little shorter today. I like to move around. Thank you, Eva. What I'm going to talk about is probably one of the best opportunities to look at for a career today and in the future. And I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here, and you'll start to see where I'm going with this. I'm going to talk about precision agriculture, but I'm also going to talk about why agriculture as a whole is a great opportunity for you in the future when it comes to future employment. If you want to travel, agriculture opens a huge number of doors for you around the world. So my question is, this is a tractor. It's a tractor in the Mississippi Delta. And what he's doing is building levees so that this field can be flooded, and they're going to grow rice. And if you know rice needs to be sitting in a certain number of inches of water. And if you look at the operator in that tractor, he's got one arm up and the other arm is across his lap. So how is that tractor able to drive and create those levees across that field? So I heard one is GPS. Yep, that's one. What else? There's three total. So I think I heard Green Star system. Okay, so computer technology. There's a third component. Don't know? Satellites. Okay, so we've got computer technology, satellites, auto steer on that tractor, computers, large computers. Basically, if it weren't for liability reasons, that tractor could operate by itself. You don't necessarily need a driver. So that operator in that tractor is basically sitting there and monitoring what's going on. The tractor is driving itself. According to a map or a prescription has been defined and uploaded into that tractor's computer. So what you say based on that information is farming today high tech? It is. There is more technology in farming today than any other industry. More than the automotive industry. Where the amount of technology is comparable to that of a jet airliner. Okay, next slide. So what I'm going to talk about is why precision agriculture is cool. It's a great opportunity for a career moving forward. Yep, thank you. So before I get into that, just a little background. Why is there such a great opportunity in agriculture for a career? Every day there's 200,000 people born. So we've got to feed that number of people. There's only a limited amount of resources and land that we can produce food on. And the population is growing exponentially. So we've got to look for solutions on how to feed a growing world population. Next slide. And by the year 2050, the global population will have increased by 50%. Do we have enough land to increase by 50%? The amount of food production? The answer is no. So we've got to look for ways, the agriculture community has got to look for ways to increase production on a defined number of acres that we have available today. Yep. And so over the next 50 years, if the population is going to double, we're going to have to produce enough food equal to that has been consumed over the last 10,000 years. That's a lot of food production. Next slide. And basically, if that amount of population is going to increase, we've got to double food production. The yields need to increase, double. And so how is that going to happen? Well, some of it's going to happen through technology, breeding of crops that are higher yields. Are farmers today as efficient at maximizing the use of their inputs today? Some would say yes, some would say no. Is there an opportunity to increase yields using current technology today on every piece of land? Absolutely. There's tremendous opportunity there. Next slide, please. And so we only have, according to the United Nations, we can only increase the number of acres globally by about 10%. After that, there really is no more productive land in the world. And actually, we're losing productive land through urban sprawl. As the cities get bigger, we're also losing productive land. So we've got issues around the world, whether it's too dry, it's too hot, we've got mountainous areas, we've got areas that are just too wet. You can't grow anything other than the tropical rainforest. We've also got land that is becoming, they say degradation, but basically there's land that's becoming deserts. It's too dry, the topsoil is blown away, and all that is left is poor sand or clay soils. And so there's a huge area around the world where the deserts are growing. Next slide. So how are we going to meet that challenge of increasing food production around the world? Well, the one thing is how we look at agriculture today is going to change. It's not your grandfather's means of farming, even how your dad's. If your dad is involved in farming today, 5 years from now, it's going to be dramatically different. Every year, what we're seeing is new technology, new hybrids, varieties, new ways to look at technology to increase farm productivity as we have it today. And so the opportunity is these farmers can't keep up with all this technology coming at them. They're looking for help. They're being overwhelmed by the amount of information, technology, changes in equipment, changes in chemicals, changes to seed. They need support to help them work that through. So what we've seen in the last 5 years here is the number of specialists, agronomists that are not affiliated to any company, but working as independents, agronomists working with farmers, either to one big farm or to multiple farms, and providing that information and support to those large farm operators, okay? The other thing we're going to start to see, if we only have so many acres that we can work with, is how do we, go back to the previous slide. How do we get more production out of every acre? So even though we're seeing farms getting bigger, farmers are going to manage their land at a smaller and smaller unit. So instead of looking at a farm as a whole, I got 1,000 acres or I've got 2,000 acres, they may increase their farm size to 5,000 acres, but how they manage that is going to shrink down to by the field. The next one will be down to a zone. The third one will be down to the acre. And then finally, what's going to happen over time here is we're going to look at ways, how can we manage every single plant individually? So an example is if this room, every chair represented a corn plant. In the future, and this is not going to be very long, every single chair I'm going to manage individually. That may be a different variety, and based on the variety, I'm going to give it a little different fertilizer subscription, the amount of fertilizer. And if I have access to irrigation, I'm going to give each plant a different volume of water. Okay, that level of technology is here today. Is it being used widely across the world? No, it's not. But that's what's coming down the pipeline. And in order for farmers to adopt that technology, they're going to need people like you to help them mainstream across the entire farm. Because it's very complicated. There's a lot of computer technology there now. Huge amounts of information. If you love dealing with numbers and data, using and working towards this type of information and technology, you will have your hands full when it comes to dealing with data and information moving forward. Next slide. And so what we're seeing is agriculture is changing fast, rapidly. Every year is dramatic changes. So we're getting, again, like I said, farmers need help to keep them up to speed. The other thing that we're seeing is equipment, crop science, and technology, computer technology, all coming together now. Whereas they worked separate from each other in the future and today, they now start to work together. And now, again, when a farmer looks at all that, he needs to find ways to bring it all together and use it so that he can farm more acres, but farm more acres more intensively. Because he's got to look for ways to increase production. If we're going to feed the world, remember, we've got 50% more mouths to feed. We've got to look for ways to increase production moving forward here. So I do work for a John Deere dealer, so some of my slides might be biased, but the green is good. But it doesn't have to be green. But John Deere did celebrate 175-year anniversary 2 years ago. And what I'm showing here on this slide is when farmers looked at ways to improve their farm operation, they would go to different manufacturers and say, I wish I could do this. I wish you could provide me with a service or a piece of equipment that could address my issues and make my life a lot easier. And that's traditionally the way that things have evolved over time. But in the last 10 years, what has happened is technology has changed so fast that it's actually passed a lot of farmers today. That's an opportunity to provide services to farmers moving forward, is helping them adopt technology. The technology that is here today, that is available to every single farmer, only about 25% of farmers are using all the technology that's available to them, even on a piece of equipment that they own today. Are they using all the technology to maximize the performance of that piece of equipment on their farm? A lot of them are not. And a lot of it is, it's too complicated, and I need some help to get me through this to make sure that I'm not making mistakes. And so part of my role with Enns Brothers is I'm now starting to hire agronomists, people with a plant production background. And yet we are an equipment dealer. But our customers are saying, I need to bring all the technology together. My equipment, technology, and crop science. And so we need that type of skill set in our organization moving forward to ensure that the equipment is using all the technology and the capabilities of the equipment that they're buying from us, because it's expensive. And so we want to make sure they're getting good value out of that. Next slide. And so what we're seeing now is everybody's using GPS. The equipment is getting a lot smarter. So what you'll find now is when you see a field out there, everything is in perfectly straight lines now. And that's to do with the GPS, the satellites. But the equipment now is also making decisions on behalf of that farmer. You'll notice where the corn rows come down and they come to a perfect stop. Did that farmer make that decision with that piece of equipment? He made that decision from his computer in his house. He developed a prescription, he uploaded it into the tractor, and then as he was planting, that tractor knew when to shut off the seed population all the way through. And remember I said we're going to manage plants down to each individual plant, right? That's already starting to happen here. This farmer knows exactly the number of seeds that he has put in the ground by acre. He knows there's 80,000 corn plants on an acre. He knows the best seed population to maximize yield. And by variety, by hybrid, it's going to be different. So that level of information, okay, who is providing that to that farmer? It'll be people like you. People who have come through an agriculture program and providing that information to that farmer. Because that farmer hasn't got time to do all of this research and provide that information. He is looking for people to be a trusted advisor on his farm. I need someone that is going to do the research, keep up to date, and help me become a better farmer moving forward. Next slide. The other thing is technology. I said farming today, agriculture today is high tech, and it's going to continue. So here's a question I have for you. Who is the #1 shareholder of John Deere? It will surprise you. Okay? It's Bill Gates. And who is Bill Gates?
Some smart guy.
Yeah, founder of Microsoft. Okay? Bill Gates sees the future of agriculture. Okay? He's recognized that through agricultural equipment, agriculture is going to change dramatically, and he sees an opportunity, so he's prepared to invest. Okay? It could have been AGCO, it could have been Case IH. He chose John Deere for whatever reason. But what I'm saying here is it just stresses that people from high-tech industries are recognizing the opportunity in agriculture moving forward. Okay? The other thing is today, okay, so we're using GPS, we're using satellites. the cloud. Okay? So this summer, I started collecting data from combines, tractors, sprayers, and it was wirelessly transmitted to a receiver, a cellular receiver, and that information was moved to the cloud. My agronomists could look at that information real time. So as farmers were completing their jobs, whether they were seeding or harvesting, my agronomists could support that individual real time and tell them, you know what, we need to make some adjustments. And so that level of information flow, high tech, is instant now, okay? So that's another opportunity globally. We could be supporting farmers in another country as long as they have that connectivity, okay? Next question, slide. Another example, I talked about agronomists, people doing field work. So this is an example of, you've got two agronomists in the field, they're looking at some corn. They are mapping where they are walking in the field using GPS and satellite. They're tracking that on their iPad. What they're looking at here is, they could be looking at diseases, they could be looking at, we've got some issues with nutrition, but they don't have all the information that they need at hand. What they could do is take a picture and send that to the seed company in St. Louis, Missouri. And then instantly, 1 or 2 minutes later, a research specialist could tell them, here's what I'm seeing, what you're seeing in the field. I need you to go back 2 weeks later. Using technology in that satellite and that GPS, they could go back to that same plant and know that they're in that same location based on what it's telling them on the iPad. And so that's how, what we're starting to see, the level of technology that's being used to provide farmers and production. So farmers if they're farming more and more acres, they can't walk every single field. So they're going to count on people to help them ensure that the crop is growing the way they want them to. Next slide. The other thing I talked about was technology. And there is computer technology in the equipment today that I think a lot of people don't realize. If you're familiar with the Apollo program, the rockets that were in the early 60s that were being developed to go to the moon. So on a new John Deere combine, but it's not just John Deere combines, it's any new combine today, there is more computer technology in that combine than the first 3 rockets of the Apollo program. So the rockets that were putting people into space 40 years ago, that combine has more computer technology. There's 1 million calculations occurring when that combine is operating. That combine, like that tractor, that sprayer I showed, has the ability to drive itself. It will use GPS to go straight lines up and down that field. That combine will also manage how fast it goes. So again, there's an individual in the combine, once it's programmed, the computer parameters are all set up, that combine will then operate itself to maximize fuel efficiency, drive those straight lines, and make sure that that harvest is being completed in the most cost-effective manner. So a lot of the decisions that you make today, or would have been made 20 or 30 years ago, are now being made by a computer on that combine. Another piece of technology here is we now have the ability for a combine and a tractor to run parallel. Everybody wants to unload on the fly here. So there is technology where that combine and that tractor are talking to each other to make sure that they're running in parallel. So why is that important? Well, we're running into issues with lack of experienced labor on farms. So we need to make sure that whoever is operating a piece of equipment moving forward, that they're not damaging it, or there's a lot of guessing that's been taken out. So I showed this, not an example of this, but I actually showed a video of the combine and the tractor unloading on the fly and nobody steering. I showed that to my mother, who's 73 years old, has been out of farming for 20 years now. She misses it. She misses the vigor, the energy of the harvest. And when I explained to her, I said, you don't have to worry about hitting the tires in that tractor or hitting the header on that combine anymore. And her response to me was, when will Earl get that capability on his farm, the guy who's renting my mom's land. She wants to get back involved and is not fearful of, well, there's all this big equipment. The equipment will drive itself. I just need to be in there. And so what we're seeing is farms are getting larger, but the complexity of operating the equipment is getting easier. The setup is where farmers need help and your support moving forward. And that's where they're coming to the dealership. I need more support to make sure that if it's going to be all automated moving forward, I got to make sure that everything's operating the way it should be. Okay? Next slide. The other things that farmers, how do we maximize yield, is looking at ways, how do I reduce risk? So one of the biggest challenges that we have in the Red River Valley here is water management. Too much water at the wrong time. Too much water in the spring. We've got heavy clay soils here. Too much water. When we do get a heavy rain, 2 inches, it just sits there. I've lost yield. So what can farmers do to ensure that I can get on the land as early as possible in the spring, and when I do get a rain event, and we seem to be getting these rain events more frequently, the 2, 3, 4 inch rains overnight, that I'm not losing yield. And so what farmers are looking at and looking for support is, give me water management solutions. Help me either drain my land more efficiently, and at the same time, I don't want to be polluting Lake Winnipeg. I want to manage the nutrients, keep them on my farm. The other aspect is, when I do get a rain event, I need to get that puddling water off the field as quickly as possible. So we're looking at those types of solutions. In the right-hand corner there, last week I met with the potato growers, and majority of the potatoes produced in Manitoba are irrigated. Water is not free. It costs money to pump hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. Are you guys going on the bus? Okay. Otherwise, you got to stay. And so that little tower there is actually a probe that goes down 1 meter into the soil. And what we're looking at is, how do we manage water better on potatoes so that we're turning on the irrigation pivot sooner and shutting it off sooner, so we're not stressing the plants. And so what this piece of technology does is it monitors the soil moisture down at different levels, down to 1 meter. There's a solar panel and an Ethernet gateway. So it's transmitting a cellular signal. My agronomists are monitoring that soil remotely, online through the cloud, and advising that farmer when to turn the irrigation pivot off and on. What's happening now is we're getting to a level of sophistication where if you've got varying types of soil across that field, we're going to slow and speed up that irrigation pivot depending on the soil type. And that's what that basically is a computer map of how that pivot, so we've got a pivot that reaches from here to Mountain Equipment Co-op, and I'm going to speed up and slow down that pivot across that field depending on the type of soil to ensure that I'm not stressing the plants, because you can give plants too much water, you're going to lose yield. So just that type of management alone could potentially increase yields by 20 or 30%, better water management. So we're not adding anything, we're just managing how we farm better. Those are the types of things that farmers are looking for today. Next slide. The other thing is coming back to technology. So last year, a service that I was providing to farmers in Manitoba was using mining equipment to map fields to determine the variability of the soil. And so the top 3 slides we were mapping the fields and determining how much variability there is in the soil. And then we were going back and soil testing and confirming what we were seeing, because what farmers are looking at is, I don't want to apply a single rate of fertilizer across the entire field. I want to apply where it's truly needed. So he's actually managing more precisely, less waste, looking for ways, if the soil is more clay, I can push more fertilizer as well. The slide, the beautiful colored slide on the left bottom corner is actually a field north of Arborg that is flat, 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 as flat as this room, half mile by half mile. And the glacial scarring goes from northwest to southeast. But the lowest area in the field is that orange area. And so what farmers, this comes back to water management. What this farmer is looking for is what can I do to that flat piece of land to better manage the water? Because in this instance, there's only about 3 feet, a meter difference from over half a mile or 1.5 kilometers difference in height. So the water doesn't move, it just stays there all year round. So when you get a 2-3 inch rain, he's losing yield. So we were looking for ways that we've mapped this field and we're starting to look, how do we drain that field better? And at the same time, keep the soil on the field. You don't want it to run as fast as possible because the soil is going to move with it. Okay? Next slide. Here's another use of technology, of how we're using technology to support farmers today. This is a satellite image of a field just west of Brandon. And so when we look at this field, I can see there's some black lines there, and that means that there's been water standing there. And so now that tells me there's a bit of variability in this field. This farmer that we were working with said the soil's the same across the entire field. And I challenged him on it. I said, do you really know that? So what we did is we took this mining tool and we mapped the field. Next slide, please. And what this slide shows is the variability of the different types of soil across that field. We'll go back and soil test the different colors across that field and see how much variability there is. What we'll find is there is a lot of variability in that field. So should this farmer apply the same rate of fertilizer across the entire field? Probably not. Okay? Could that farmer have done this himself? Yes, he could have, but he hasn't got the time. And again, that's where he's looking for support and services. He's looking for someone with an agriculture background, a degree in agriculture, a specialist, a trusted advisor to help them move forward. So that's another example of ways that we can support and help farmers produce larger yields. Next slide. And so what we're seeing is this level, we're going to manage the variability, maximize the yields where we have to, and actually in some respects, you know what? I got poor soil here, I'm going to reduce the amount of inputs, fertilizer and whatnot, because there's no hope. Okay? I'm not going to spend money where it doesn't make sense. And so, remember I said, we're going to reduce how we manage farms to smaller and smaller units of measure. Next slide. And so, I did talk about the opportunities around the world. What we're seeing is farmers are getting bigger all the time. In North America, there is a fair number of farms that are over 25,000 acres. There are farms that are 100,000 acres in North America. In Australia, majority of the grain farms are well over 100,000 acres. There's numerous farms that are 250,000 acres. With the change of politics and the opening up of Eastern Europe, we're now starting to see farms in Kazakhstan and Russia that are 1 million hectares, or 2.5 million acres. So now we've got some issues here. With those types of farms, they're going to be looking for agronomists. I need people to help me grow these crops. But I'm also going to need logistics people. People with a background in managing fleets of equipment. This is a farm, I would say this is a 40,000 acre farm in Brazil. When the trucks that support this equipment, the trucks either hauling the grain or the trucks providing the seed and the fertilizer start moving, now you have 3 times the amount of equipment. You've got to manage that. You never want those combines to stop. You never want those planters or air seeders to stop. When you have that many acres, you want them to be working around the clock and constantly moving, because you only have a defined number of days that you can seed a crop or harvest a crop. And the example I'll give you is the last 3 springs in Manitoba, we've had roughly 12 to 14 days, ideal days to seed. So it didn't matter if the farmer was 4,000 acres or 25,000 acres, got to get it done. If it's delayed, the later you seed, your yields start to drop. Early seeding is paramount, okay? And so those types of things, farmers are coming back to my dealership, but also to agronomists. I can never stop. I need your support around the clock, and if my piece of equipment goes down, I need you to be able to fix that piece of equipment or give me another piece of equipment that I'm going to just pull a tractor out and put another one in there and keep going. If you only have 14 days to seed and you're down for 4 days, that will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in yield 3 months from that time, okay? And so the risk management is huge now. Next slide. So moving forward, what we're going to see is change, change, change. Every year there's going to be more technology, more changes in the way we farm today. Farmers need support. They need help, people to advise them and keep them up to speed as the technology changes. We're going to start to see robotics involved. There's issues with liability and whatnot of what equipment can do without operators, but we will start to see robotics. AUV, so it's basically an aerial unmanned vehicle, drones. We already have drones, so either it's a small aircraft or a small helicopter. It's just like the one you have at home, the remote control helicopter, but these are bigger and they have a camera on them. If a farmer has 25,000 acres and he wants to view all his acres, do a crop inspection in 2 days, how is he going to do that? So they're looking at using drones to look at their fields. A satellite image will only give you 5-meter clarity. A drone will give you 1/3 of a meter clarity. So you can get very close look at what's happening in that piece of land. Satellite imagery will continue. NASA, a year ago, so the space program in the US, NASA made an announcement a year ago of a substantial investment of looking at how can they further support agriculture in the future with satellites. They're looking for revenue streams. They're putting satellites up there. How can we support agriculture moving forward? Weather modeling, okay? Weather is a huge risk for agriculture as a whole, whether it's too hot, too dry, storms, too much rain, snow, late seeding, early seeding, all these things. And the more information a farmer has, the more he can make some management decisions. He can't control it, but he can make some decisions on his farm. Managing plants down to each individual plant. Yes, that will continue and will become more and more common. Smart equipment. Equipment that makes decisions on the fly. Big data. Data, data, data. You're going to hear a lot more about big data and data being pulled and accumulated in analysis to make better farm decisions. One of the things I'm working on right now is working with farmers to collect data from their entire farm operation, but also now to look at that data and analyze it. What is it telling us? What can I, from that data, what can I do on my farm to improve my profitability or increase my yields? Next slide. So this was a statement made, and I'm not advocating it, but I found it very interesting. It was from NBC last fall. And this reporter is making the statement, you know, the sexy job is to be in the financial market in Wall Street. What he is saying is forget about it. Look at agriculture. The future is agriculture. There's huge opportunities in agriculture. I would be an advocate of getting a master's in agriculture. Instead of a MBA is a master's in business administration. But I found it ironic. The only issue I have with this slide, he's got a blue tractor. It should be green. Okay, next slide. So I got two slides remaining, and I do appreciate your patience. Huge opportunities in agriculture, whether it's precision ag, whether it's in research, whether it's market development, whether it's providing services for farmers. There's opportunities around the world in agriculture today. Agriculture is high tech and will continue to be high tech. If you love computers and dealing with high tech equipment, agriculture is an industry you should look at. Agriculture, I can't think of a better group of people to work with than farmers. Farmers are innovators. They're good people, they're honest people. And that's the one thing I love about dealing with farmers. Okay? Some of the most innovative people you'll find are farmers, and the most common question a farmer will ask you when you're providing a service is, what's new? Tell me what's new. And if you're able to do that, provide them with that, what's new? I've got some information, I've got some ideas here that can help you in your farm operation. You've got a customer for life. They then look at you as a trusted advisor. And so, what do I need? If I'm going to be in the agriculture industry, where should I focus my education in high school and moving forward? The sciences are critical. Biology, chemistry, math, physics. The more you can take, the better off you will be. Okay? My background is in agriculture, and I specialized in economics and agronomy. There's multiple fields you can take in agriculture, whether it's animal science, crop science, plant science, entomology, dealing with bugs, animal husbandry, veterinary, all the way through. There's multiple areas. Okay? Huge opportunities. And I would say, from a faculty standpoint, the agriculture faculty has the most fun. So from a social side, also consider agriculture. So, next. The opportunities are endless. And as my first slide said, if anyone tells you that agriculture is not cool, it's not high tech, and it's something that you should be proud of to be a farmer and to work with farmers, they're wrong. Okay? Agriculture is a great industry, and it will continue to be a great industry moving forward.